Truth News Radio Australia, going beyond the spin, deception and propaganda of mainstream news. Visit truthnews.com.au and subscribe now. Welcome back to the show. Well, tonight it's my great pleasure to have on the show Keelan Balderson from the UK. And as I mentioned earlier, I watched the film that he made recently, very recently in fact, and I thought it was really excellent analysis, really kind of reflected a lot of the thoughts that I've been having and some of the things we talked about on the last show. And he agreed to come on at very short notice. And Keelan's runs a site called WideShut.co.uk, which has a lot of news in it, and I believe it's got a weekly podcast also. Welcome to the show, Keelan.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, look, it's great to have you on. Really interested to know, I guess, more of your perspective of what's going on in the UK. Can I just ask, where are you based in the UK?
Thankfully, I'm more in the countryside, kind of out of the way of things. So, I mean, I wasn't in the thick of it, but yeah.
Sure, and your little film that you put together there, I guess you just compiled news footage and stuff that was available. Was any of it kind of shot by yourself or people that you connected with?
There's a few people I contacted, yeah, but mainly it was just YouTube clips,
Yep.
news footage, just sort of compiled together into one kind of narrative.
Yeah. Well, it certainly illustrates what I would call the deeper context of what's actually going on, and that affects a lot of other countries. It's not just the UK. But what do you see happening now, Keelan, with the aftermath of this and the alleged crackdown that's going to occur from the government? How is that actually going to unfold, do you think?
Well, just on the fallout, I think the one good thing that has come out of it is that people are now coming together. Communities have come together to help each other and organise each other to help with the cleanup. So, I mean, if you're into the real anarchism philosophy, not this G20 smashing stuff up thing, but the real concept of anarchism, I think
Sure.
This is quite a good example that people don't need government to tell them what to do. They don't need the government to sweep in and fix things. When left to their own devices, people will help each other out, and that's what we've been seeing. But with this crackdown, I mean, David Cameron, our Prime Minister, he essentially says one thing, and then he does another. He says, "Oh, we've got these deep societal problems. We need to get to the root causes of these things," and then he just goes, "All right, well, we need to throw everyone in jail, we need to shut down social media, we need to do all these things." And it's like, well, do you want to get to the deep societal issues in the country, or is that just lip service?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was slightly amazed that they played that address on the radio here live, and when he was saying there about we need to get to the deeper issues, I sort of thought, well, maybe that's going to be something good, and then he launched straight into this law and order tirade, and basically just treating the people who have done this as just some sort of blight on society, something that just needs to be kind of, I mean, eliminated, even exterminated. I mean, there seems to be no attempt to understand these people as human beings, and I find that very worrying, because when you have that sort of rhetoric, when you have that sort of language, the next steps can be, virtual sort of ethnic cleansing, or whatever term you want to use. But I mean, basically, you've basically dehumanized a certain part of society. And, I can assure you we've got the same sort of things in Australia, not on the same scale because it's a smaller population, but we've got the same social factors in large cities in Australia, in Sydney particularly, which can erupt in the same way. And we've also had these policies from the governments that are trying to deal with economic collapse that seem to be basically just raping the economy and taking away benefits and taking away things from people. And I know one of the measures that they were actually talking about implementing in the UK was that the families of some of these people who were in the riots would have their housing taken away from them. I mean, that's just an incredible sort of collective punishment. That reminds me of what they do in Israel.
Yeah, it's a very reactionary kind of thing we've got going on now, and in my eyes, yeah, all it's going to do is re-inflame the situation. They want to take people's welfare away if they were involved in the riots. So I mean, poor people that were rioting are just going to get a lot poorer. And I mean, what are they going to do? They're probably going to turn to more crime to try and make up that money that they've lost. Another punishment, like you say, is that they're trying to evict whole families from their homes. So if one kid is caught in the riots, their entire family loses their house, just like that. One case was a kid and his mum, this 12-year-old boy, who all he stole was, and of course no one's condoning stealing, but all this kid stole was a bottle of wine, and now his mum and him face eviction from their council house. In fact, in some of these cases, eviction proceedings went ahead before the people were even convicted in court. So they're not even following any kind of due process. It's completely ridiculous. How is evicting a kid and his mum going to solve the deep societal problems in this country? Another case that luckily was overturned, they tried to give a mother of two a 6-month jail sentence because she accepted, like a £10 pair of stolen shorts. She wasn't even part of the riot. It was something her flatmate, said, "Oh, do you want these shorts?" She said, "Yeah," and then she nearly got a 6-month jail sentence. But thankfully, she kind of appealed that. But it's just reactionary. They're just out with their pitchforks, and it's completely ridiculous.
It seems that these measures, if anything, are going to trigger more violence because these are the sort of things that will actually cause people to get angry and hit the streets again. And so rather than fixing it, what they're doing seems to be almost a provocation to inflame it more. And in your documentary, you've got some quotes from people who are saying that that sort of police intimidation has been increasing and has been a real bane on the life of people living in some of these areas. I mean, is that your sense too? I mean, we've seen the increasing police powers given to in many countries, but in the UK and also in Australia over the years since terrorism became such a big issue, and of course they gave themselves more and more powers to basically stop and search. And I mean, do you see that as actually having been a factor in what's created some of these problems?
Well, definitely in the inner cities where there's this sort of blanket approach to stop and search and gang culture. Basically, everybody that lives in this area is automatically a gang member, and there's been a lot of injustice within these areas, and the people basically have had enough, and that's kind of what was the initial spark. We have to look at this guy Mark Duggan, and fair enough. I mean, I'm not condoning hardcore drug dealers or gang members or whatever. If that's what this Mark Duggan guy was, obviously they ruin people's lives, and if there was evidence that he was some kind of gang member or drug dealer, he deserved to go to jail and deserved help and things like that. But, and there's a massive but there, this guy was pulled from a taxi by several officers, pinned to the ground, according to eyewitnesses, and the police themselves now admit that he was executed at point blank range. And there's supposed to be such thing as due process in this country. There's supposed to be justice in this country. This is England. This isn't some brutal dictatorship or police state where cops can just kill people and get away with it. And you can say, oh, it's one less gangbanger on the streets. But once you start turning a blind eye to one situation, it quickly creeps up into other situations. And we've seen this stuff before. Let me try and pull up this figure. 333 people since 1998 have died in police custody, and not one police officer has been convicted. We've seen high-profile cases like the murder of Jean-Charles Jimenez after 7/7, where this innocent guy, who it turned out didn't jump the barrier, didn't run, but they shot him 9 times in the head. We've seen the death of Ian Tomlinson at the G20, and they tried their hardest to cover that up with a dodgy post-mortem, false testimonies. And there's all these things, and there is a problem, I think, with policing in this country, and that is what sparked the initial rioting.
Yeah, look, the disturbing parallels there between the way this guy was executed and the Menendez case, it looks like certain parts of the police, certain factions within the police have got this mentality, and they basically think they can just take people out when they need to. We're going to break. I've actually got a song here lined up, and then we'll be back for another couple of seconds.
You're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here tonight with Keelan Balderson from the UK, who's made a film called Perfect Storm, the London riots, the England riots. And Keelan, just having a look at the page here from your website, I noticed that there's a few comments there that suggest that people don't see the way you see it. I mean, the tendency to want to just see the people who commit these acts as just scum is very strong, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I will clarify. I'm not condoning any kind of violent rioting, especially when people have died and local mum and pop businesses have been destroyed and things like that. Violence obviously solves nothing. It just gives the state more of a reason to oppress people. But the reason I made the video, and kudos to everyone that was actually on the ground and had the balls to film it all and to talk to people. As I say, fortunately I'm tucked away in the country out of harm's way. But I made the film to show the sickening hypocrisy of the system, whereby bankers can steal billions, politicians can invade foreign countries without any kind of public consultation. They can fiddle their expenses and do all these things. And then when we have riots, mostly down to their own policies, they have the gall to take some kind of moral high ground. Let's call a spade a spade. The people that run England and a lot of the world are absolute scumbags that have stolen and harmed far more than any of these young people could ever do. Instead of coming out all guns blazing, oh, shoot the scumbags. Ugh. How about we actually try and educate these people so they can channel their anger in a more productive manner?
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's a theme that we talk about a lot on this show. Just the incredible hypocrisy. What seems to me the fake morality that has become the kind of the signature of the countries that are part of this this kind of axis of evil of the West. It's like the ever since the 9/11 and the invasions of all these countries, the countries, and Australia is very much part of this, that are part of that, have used this language of morality to actually perpetrate crimes against humanity. And of course, there are protest movements, and there are anti-war groups, but they get ignored. Everything just moves ahead relentlessly, and anyone who then doesn't conform to that is just seen as being somehow fringe and is not part of this concept. And they use terms like the international community, and they use terms like humanitarian intervention and kinetic military action, and there is a culture of deceit, a culture of propaganda, and I have to say the BBC is one of the worst offenders in that area of basically just using a news vehicle as a propaganda vehicle. I don't know what your take on that is, but it's pretty extreme when you listen to the way the BBC basically repackages all this information to basically brainwash people. That's all I can say.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, over here in England, we have to pay something called a TV license, and I haven't paid that for a couple of years now, because why would I support my own brainwashing. These are the people that said there were weapons of mass destruction. These are the people that, promote the phony war on terror. These are the people that are lying to us on a daily basis. So why would I pay that? And you see the subtle kind of tactics that they use, even with these riots. They get this well-respected journalist, broadcaster in his own right, a man called Darkus Howe, on the news to get his perspective, and then they call him Marcus. They call him the wrong name, and then they cut him off all the time, and they say, "Oh, well, that might have happened, Marcus, but blah blah blah." And it's like they're trying to act like the parents of all the knowledge when, they're the people on the ground. Let them speak.
Absolutely. So, what's the current atmosphere like now? Is there do you feel that it's basically died down now, or is it still volatile?
Well, the rioting has basically fizzled out, but as we've talked about, there is this reactionary mentality where they just want to stomp everything out and just call them scum and move on. But what the middle classes, I think, need to realise is that it is going to get worse. A lot of them may be next in line as more cuts are made and as more draconian measures are put in place with this whole Ponzi scheme that's taking everybody's wealth and causing all of this mess. We thought these riots were bad, with out of control kids not giving a damn anymore. Well, what happens when the education cuts take full swing? We'll have a whole new generation of people that are way less educated than they are now and who don't care even more. And how are we going to contain future riots? We're facing 34,000 police cuts. They were stretched already, so it doesn't look good, really. It doesn't.
Do you what are the planned cuts that are coming up for the UK? Not totally up to speed with how the UK has had to respond to all of the problems in other EU nations. Are we looking at austerity measures in the UK at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's blanket austerity measures, cuts to police, cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, selling things off, privatising them. It really is actually in a bad state. And people they don't seem to want to admit it. It's like, we're England, we're okay. No, we're not okay. We have a 4.8 trillion national debt. And that's only going to go up. And one thing I find funny is that people are coming out, all angry. Oh, my tax money is gonna pay for these riots. Hold your horses there. Your tax money is already going to pay a 4.8 trillion national debt that you didn't create, and you're worrying about an extra 200 million. I did a little bit of math for the film, and I basically just added up the banker bailout, the invasion of Libya, and this corporate tax evasion that the government are letting these big corporations get away with. And for the riots to be on the same level as all of that financial looting, they'd have to have 4,320 more riots. So people need to get their priorities straight.
Yeah, like that was an incredibly well presented set of facts there in your film, and of course the banker bailout is really the heart of the evil here. I mean, the banker bailouts, which took place all over the Western world, America and Europe particularly, have been just criminal. I mean, there is really no other way to describe it, and I think until that is addressed, there's this concept of the social contract. I mean, it's a concept that goes back to sort of philosophical ideas from the Enlightenment, and the social contract is a concept that the people will accept a government and will accept sort of restrictions and laws, provided that the government reciprocates and provides the things that the people expect. But when that contract is broken, then you can expect violence. And again, I'm not certainly endorsing that. But writers like Voltaire and people like that basically said this hundreds of years ago, that this will happen. When the social contract is broken, when governments lose their legitimacy, there will be violent uprising, and of course it will be there will be an attempt to portray that as just criminality. But I mean that again, that's like a 19th century thing as well. I mean, if you actually go back to the way this country, Australia, was formed, I mean, basically they were economic refugees who had to steal to survive, who were then called criminals, and they were shipped off to Australia. And that, you know, that's kind of the mentality that was behind the construction of this country that I live in. But it's incredible that all this time later, the same mentality is applied to people who are, you know, in this underclass. And it's just an underclass. I mean, I guess it's people who really don't have a potential of working. There isn't really work for them. They are dependent on government handouts, and it's been cultivated that way, and it's just grown decade after decade. I mean, is there any way out? Can you foresee any way out for this culture of people who are dependent on government handouts?
Well, I mean, you get called a fearmonger if you don't have some kind of all-inclusive solution to save the world, but there is no easy solution, because the corruption goes right to the core of the system. Personally, you know, I'd like to see an end to the EU. I'd like to see all the troops home tomorrow, and an end to green subsidies and secret taxes based off the global warming hype. In terms of the banking system, we need to implement some kind of, and I think they're trying to do that. It's a little bit late because they've already got away with it. But this Glass-Steagall system of ring fencing, where you separate the gamblers and the speculators from the regular high street banks, that needs to be put in place as soon as possible. We need to drastically increase the reserves that banks have to hold, because they've been essentially loaning out money that they don't even have, creating it out of thin air, and then demanding it back with interest. That's a complete scam. And how can we allow private entities to loan to the government? It just puts the government on a fishing line to the banks. There's so many things, and it's not going to be an easy way out, because it goes right to the core.
Yeah, really excellent points. But we're just taking another short break, and we've got one more segment. Are you good to stay on for the final segment?
Yeah, sure.
Great, cheers. Okay, welcome back to the show. Just here with Keelan today, Keelan Balderson from the UK. Sorry, I think I called you Brendan there a minute ago. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, look, Keelan, can I just ask a little bit about your site, your news site? How long has this been going?
I would say 2 years, maybe 3 years. I'm not even sure, but it's basically just, you know, one man trying to spread a bit of information, a bit of alternative news that the mainstream doesn't cover.
Sure.
I also do a radio show on Mondays on resistradio.com.
Okay.
So yeah, just, you know, trying to spread some awareness.
Excellent. Yeah, wideshut.co.uk, and Resistance Radio is a live format broadcast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And so what other topics have you been looking at on your news site?
Well, my most extensive kind of investigation, or whatever you want to call it, was the 7/7 London bombings. And I actually did quite an extensive film, about 4.5 hours long, looking into that whole thing. And I'm actually working on a remake of that, because I've kind of learnt with this new film that I did, it's probably better to make it shorter and more to the point, so the average person can see it and go, oh yeah, cool, rather than this massive kind of encyclopedic film that I first did. I'm going to shorten it down and re-release it, I think.
Yeah, great, because often people just don't have the time as well, and when it's really long, you just think, oh, I'll save that for when I've got a weekend to spare. But I just saw the ad for that on your site. I'd actually really like to check it out myself. So 4 hours, wow! So there must be a lot of material in there.
Yeah, well, it basically it covers the day itself, all the anomalies in the official story, which was obviously penned by an anonymous civil servant. You know, they got so much wrong in there. Even the train time that these people supposedly got to
Yeah.
go to London and things like that. And then I get into the history of Al-Qaeda and how it's essentially contrived. It grew out of an intranet system that the Mujahideen used, and the Mujahideen was obviously funded by the CIA. I get into Bin Laden and a bit about 9/11. You know, just the whole shebang, start to finish.
That is really fascinating. I'm quite keen to check it out. Do you have proof that the alleged bombers were connected to intelligence services? Because this idea has been floated a few times. Do you have any evidence to prove that?
I don't prescribe to the idea that these men had nothing to do with it, or that they weren't there on a day, or things like that. I think that was a bit speculative right at the start when people were looking into it. There's a lot more that's come out now, but there's absolutely connections to intelligence agencies. You know, they were in contact with all sorts of intelligence assets who were instructing them to go to terror training camps that were run by FBI assets, and when they come back they get phone calls from another intelligence asset, and there's all the, it's basically, in my opinion, they were sort of groomed patsies in a wider kind of operation.
And this is the style, isn't it? I mean, this is the way. I mean, this is fully acknowledged that the major crime-fighting organisations in the US, the UK, and in Australia, they actually seed and fund terrorism operations that then they call sting operations. And quite often they'll pay for the ingredients. They'll encourage potential terrorists to concoct a plan, and they'll actually be recording telephone conversations while they do it. And then they have a high-profile bust, and they say, look, we've foiled another terrorism plot. And you look into it, and this is fully acknowledged. It's actually happened here. It's happened in Melbourne. It's happened in Sydney, where the people concerned were really just patsies of the Australian Federal Police. And they never would have been able to bring these plans to conclusion on their own anyway. And typically they're actually mentally disturbed, very common. They've got some sort of mental illness problem as well.
Yeah, I looked to, there was the Christmas tree bomber who apparently wanted to blow up some Christmas, I don't know, I think it was in one of the American cities, some Christmas tree sort of turning on the light celebration. He wanted to blow all that up. And basically the FBI had been chatting to him via email, coaxing him along. And then they were the ones that gave him the dud bomb to begin with.
Sure.
And as soon as he goes there to press it like an idiot, they swoop in and arrest him, even though they set him up completely. Or you've got the underpants bomber who was led onto the plane without a passport, bypassed security. It came out that higher ups in the intelligence agencies ordered all that to happen, and then he sparks some firecracker in his pants, and all of a sudden the whole of the Western world has to have these naked body scanners that were already there before it happened. It's ridiculous.
It's just so ludicrous, isn't it? And of course, coming out of the UK, we had, first of all, the shoe bomber, which was the precursor for making us take our shoes off when we go through security checkpoints. Then we had the liquid explosives plot, and so each time there is some new foiled plot, there is some new level of draconian, invasion of your privacy that they're allowing themselves. And but of course, getting back to the riots again, and what we've all been afraid of has now come to pass. I mean, all of this apparatus, all of this mechanism of totalitarian control, which we thought, or some people thought, look, it's just for the terrorists, it's just for the foreigners, it's just for these extremists from overseas. Well, this can now be used against ordinary people. And this had been predicted. And this was why people have been up in arms about it as a really serious problem that we've been lied to about terrorism, because it appears to have been part of a pretext to just give government more and more power. So what do you think of the level of awareness of this now? Do you think more people are actually aware of that, or are people still just sleepwalking into a kind of Orwellian nightmare?
Well, I was quite optimistic, in the last year, and then the whole royal wedding came about, and I actually went to that to sort of protest it. Thankfully, the people I was with, we didn't get arrested, but a lot of people did get arrested before they could even get to the event. And this ties in with the whole social media crackdown that we're seeing because of the riots. They say, oh, we're going to implement this to stop people that we think or maybe committing a crime. But if we go back to the royal wedding, they completely abused that system. They were trawling social networks and stuff to see what people were going to be doing on the day, and then they arrested loads of people just, they just wanted to go and share a different opinion with these zombies walking around with their flags, and they were stopped. There was an elderly couple who wanted to do some street theatre where they were going to sort of chop the head off some mock, I don't know, what I mean, some dummy or something, and they were arrested before they could get there. During the event, people with leaflets were forced to give their details over. They arrested some kid because he had a pen in his bag, and this kid was crying. There was a group of people dressed up as zombies, I guess, to illustrate the masses and their adoration for the royals. They were carted off in a police van. It's ridiculous. So if you think this is just to stop people that might be committing a crime, no, it's to stop people that they want to stop having an opinion.
Indeed, and of course, there's been talk about similar measures in America. I read some stuff today that the authorities in the US are actually looking at what's happened in the UK, and they're setting up Twitter and Facebook monitoring services. I mean, the irony there is that we know they've been manipulating Twitter and Facebook, and we know they've actually been creating armies of zombie Facebook accounts to actually try and influence social unrest in Libya and Egypt. I mean, the irony is, and the stupidity of it is just it's ridiculous. That on the one hand they're saying isn't it great that that Facebook has been used for these liberation movements in the Arab Spring. And exactly, the exact same phenomenon. They're saying we've got to stamp it out in the UK. I mean, it's pretty dumb, isn't it?
It is, and just on the Facebook censorship thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had articles mysteriously disappear when I've posted them up. Actually, during the riots, I had this status that I wanted to post, and it wouldn't post. And I thought to myself, is that because it's got the word riots in it? So what I did was space the word riots out so it was each individual letter on its own character line, and then it magically posted. So they were clearly censoring certain posts based on the word riots. So that's just plain and clear censorship.
Look, tyranny is dumb. Tyranny is stupid, and I think if anything that should make us feel more confident that we can beat it, because if it stoops to that stupidity level of filtering out a word because they think that word is bad, and I think they can stop things by doing that, they're just so out of touch. They're so out of touch with reality. And the positive I see out of this is that we who understand what's going on, we just actually have to educate more people. And obviously you're doing that with your work there, and it's really important. Really kudos to you for that. And I mean, it's tough because so many of the people and the kids who are engaging in these antisocial activities don't really have a clue, and I mean they do have a sense that they've been screwed. I take your point there from your film, and that is real, and there is a reaction to that, but there is an education problem. It's our responsibility sometimes to educate people on all levels to understand the real social mechanism of tyranny. Look, we're just about out of time. It's been great.
Thanks for having me, man.
Really, really good discussion, and I'd like to do it again sometime. And if you'd ever like to get anyone on to your show from this end, you're most welcome.
Yeah, sure thing, man. I'll talk to you sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Keelan.
Cheers.
Cheers.